What's up, everybody? It's Kelcey tonight, joining you guys for a quick little thing I didn't think I was going to be doing on a Sunday night. Let's talk about the UFL. If you guys don't know what's going on in the UFL, lots of union drama and lots of people not understanding what unions do. Why does this matter? This is what I do for a living. I actually literally talk union work, the good work they do, and some of the bad they do, that we've always heard about in the history. But it's worth talking about because there's a lot of misinformation on what's going on with his players, boycott and what's going on, what a union is, why the unions are problematic, I guess, is what their people are talking about. Why the UFLs just say forget it. I've heard some weird comments about it. I've seen some people that really don't understand unions commenting on what unions try to do, like charging more, things like that. So we're just going to go through it. We're going to start with like just basics, right? We're going to talk what are unions, how does it affect sports? What do they do to help? Specifically, what's happening in the UFL? So we're going to start just basic 101 first. We're going to get a few things out of the way. What is a union, right? That's what we're going to start with. What's a union? Simple, factual. A union is a group of workers that form an organization to advocate for improved workplace protections and living wages for their fellow coworkers. Now, I got to stop here and talk about living wages for a second because I guess people don't understand what a living wage is. A living wage is not what your salary is. It is what your salary should be. It's based on community factors such as inflation rates and what the cost of gas, cost of medical bills, cost of the houses in the area, cost of rent in the area, cost of utilities. Those are all calculated. The Bureau of Labor Statistics, the U.S. government, puts this out every year. And a living wage is what you're supposed to be paid to live an average life. That is the average wage for your region. That's a living wage. It's not just above the threshold for lower class. It's not just above the threshold for what is a middle class person. It is dead average across all working people in a region. So I say that to say this. In America, for a family, just on average, a family of four is what they classify it as. $71,000 is what you have to make. All right. We'll talk about this a little more later. That is across the board in the U.S., all communities put together, $71,000. Keep that in the back of your head. So we'll talk more about that later. All right, so that's what a union is. Unions, their job is to protect you. Their job is to give you wages, make sure your wages are there, protect you against, corporate greed, things like that. Corporations, just by nature, that's how they make money, is finding ways to cut costs, which means at times paying workers less. We get it. It's part of the American economy. It's the free market. Doesn't mean it's right, but it's part of the free market in America. We're not getting into politics. We're just talking about this, what it is. So what do unions do to help? Basic collections for ways unions assist workers. One, I just mentioned it. Negotiate better pay and benefits with employers. It goes into healthcare, pension, retirement, just in general mental health conditions, which is something now. Improve worker conditions. There's a misspelling there. Sorry about that. But improve working conditions. So safety on the job, tools to be safer. These are all pieces and parts of what is an improved working condition. Protect workers' rights, preventing you from being unjustly fired, which we'll get into in a second because there's been some rumors about that. And then on top of that, they provide workers with a voice in their careers, meaning they get to provide their input. They elect, we'll talk about this in a minute. They elect people to represent them as the union leaders in negotiations to provide a voice in the path that their career takes, whether it be wages, benefits, career progression. Those are all pieces that is taking place in a union. Now, how is a union chosen? As I just mentioned, a union must be chosen by the workers to represent them through a union election. A union isn't just installed in America. It's not done here. Those are company-run unions. You see a lot of them in Mexico and a few other countries that aren't the best labor-friendly countries. But in the U.S., you are required by law to go through a union election process. Now, the results of this vote, if you're not voluntarily recognized by your employer, the union is not voluntarily recognized by the employer first, it will go to a blind vote. These votes are then sent to the National Labor Relations Board, the NLRB, to be counted and verified. All right. The results of this vote determine whether you're being represented by a union or not. So for what we do, what we're talking about in sports, this used to be the USW, the United Steelworkers. The UFPA, when it was the USFL, was affiliated with the United Steelworkers. The United Steelworkers helped with this process for the UFPA. Now, we'll get into this a little more. They are not. So it is just the UFPA standalone as an independent organization chosen by the players. That's very important. chosen by the players. Okay. Now, how are they funded? This is not a slide up here, but it is worth mentioning. This is an important piece, guys. Unions don't cost the corporations, the employers, any more money. Unions are paid for by workers through dues. It's taken out of your paycheck. Okay. So if you want to be a part of a union, you have to pay a portion of your proceeds. It's, a percentage, like 1% to 2%, if that, pennies, nickels, dimes of your current man hours. In the sports world, yes, we're talking a lot more money because they get paid a lot more on average, and they work less per day, or work less over a year than we do as normal employees. Okay, so just get the numbers out of your head. We're not talking dollar bills, 1-to-1 ratio here. We're talking athletes. So that's why we're going to go into unions in sports. It's a little different, but like public or private unions, sports unions advocate for professional athletes. They sit in the room with league owners to negotiate compensation min and maxes, so what they can be paid at the minimum, what they can be paid at the maximum. NBA, obviously, you hear about the supermax contracts. That's the maximum. Pension plans. What's your retirement going to look like? Those are all pieces and parts of this. So your 401k, your retirement. Do you have an annuity? Those are all conversations that are handled by the unions for the athletes. And then the health insurance. Obviously, athletes are in a physically demanding sport. You see this a lot in the trade unions as well. Very physically demanding work requires better health insurance because you're going to need a doctor to take care of your back, to take care of your body, take care of your mind going forward, because these jobs are highly stressful. They are very dangerous in some cases in sports, maybe not so dangerous as much as they can have a greater lasting impact on your life because you do a lot more in a shorter period of time than an average trade. Okay, so that's important. Health insurance is an important part for what we're talking about with the UFL. Let's not get it twisted. All right, I'm giving you guys a rundown of all these basics before I get into everything else because, trust me, this thing gets wild. Now, sports unions also protect players from unfair working conditions. This means if you bring a player in on trade or your conditions around the clubhouse aren't up to snuff, we hear it all the time in locker rooms in college football. That's just gross. Iowa's locker room is one of the big ones. Their visitors' locker room just looks gross. Just seems gross. It's not the pink. It's the rundown wooden building, like wooden facilities, very poor plumbing. It's been updated now. But at times, we have heard it throughout the years. This is all a thing that for unions, for players, they are specifically required to monitor for the unions. The unions are required to monitor that for the players. The Major League Baseball, the Minor League Baseball Players Association is a big one that's done this recently, where they are now improving the working conditions in the clubhouses around the league to get the infrastructure better for the players to succeed. That's all part of trying to make the jobs better. That's a little different for sports based on what they do, sports unions versus the rest of the world in unions. But they also establish rules that must be followed by not only players, but owners as well. Bargaining rights. That's a thing. The NFL right now, going through their official tampering period, whatever it's called, that's all part of these rules established by unions in a conversation amongst the owners and players. Players have to vote on these rights just like the owners do. Okay, so it's not just the carte blanche, the union decides these things. All right, and on the last thing, it is monitor the terms for the collective bargaining agreements to ensure all sides are in compliance. This is very important as well because collective bargaining agreement is the contract for the athletes to compete under. You need a collective bargaining agreement or a contract to play the sport. You do not work for free. That is illegal in the United States. You cannot work for free off the clock. That is illegal. That is a breach of contract. The only people that can do that are owners or people that just don't report. That's it. Legal-wise, though, not a legal thing to do in the United States. So everybody we'll talk about it in a second. Actually, I'm going to get off topic if I don't get through this. I'll hold that for a second. All right, unions in sports. So notable sports unions in the United States. You have the NBA-PA, which is National Basketball NBPA, NHL-PA, National Hockey League, NFL-PA, we all know them. MLB-PA, we all know them. Minor League Baseball-PA is also associated with the MLB-PA. Major League Soccer-PA, NWSL-PA, WNBA-PA. I can go on and on and on and on about professional sports having unions. Why does this matter? All right. If you guys haven't been keeping up with the UFL, let's go 2 years ago. Let's start there. 2 years ago, you had the USFL and you had the XFL. The USFL had the USFL Players Union, which was represented by UFPA, then affiliated with the Steelworkers, the United Steelworkers, USW. Okay, They were getting paid higher wages. They had better benefits than their XFL counterparts. That was part of the deal. Now both leagues went into some issues with financials and they decided to combine. They took 8 teams each, combined them, cut it down to 8 teams total, cutting the player pool in half and dropping the wages, which is a very important part of this, to a total of, on average, $55,000 per player per season. Now, remember that number I said earlier? That's $71,000 for a family to live on average in the United States. Okay? Very important is the UFL does not play in a central location. They play all over the United States, so it's hard to give them an average based on that community. They don't live in Arlington. They live in a hotel in Arlington. That's not living. That is staying temporarily. Their home would determine what their living wage should be. So on average, what sports leagues do is they give you a league average based on living wages determined by the federal government, the United States Bureau of Labor Statistics. So $71,000 is the average. They're making $55,000. Think there might be a problem there if we're trying to create a league that can be a standalone or development league for the NFL. These guys are just looking for opportunities. I'm not saying that everybody needs to be going and being paid $60,000, $70,000, $80,000, but in their sport specifically, now you also want to include the fact that they had not previously been given health insurance beyond the season. So for 10 weeks of a regular season, they're covered. The playoffs, they're covered. After that, nothing. Off season, nothing. Preseason, they get covered, but they only make $350 to $850 a week. Then $5,500 a week if you're on a roster. But remember, these are only 10-week seasons, so $55,000 is the average salary. You're supposed to be making $71,000 to live with a family. Just saying, there's difference there. All right, so we fast forward a little bit. We're getting beyond, getting sidetracked. There's a lot of pieces to this. So they were making $55,000 last year. They had a CBA all the way through 2024. That was by the USFLPA. So once they became the UFL, they were represented by the UFLPA, which was also affiliated with Steelworkers. But it was not the UFPA. The UFPA had bowed out. In October of 2024, in the offseason of the UFL, the players got together, decided to decertify the union that was the USLPA. The United Steelworkers also chose to back out of that agreement after the decertification was filed with the NLRB. In response, players decided to vote the UFPA as their new representative. This vote was passed by the NLRB and approved and recognized by the UFL. Now, that was in October, all right? Once they get through that process, then it comes back to the union. They have to elect leadership. Evidently, they did that pretty quickly. They were able to get to the bargaining table in December. Now, here's where things got a little hairy. There was supposedly 2 months worth of solid negotiations. Well, the last proposal sent to the players was considered, quote, unacceptable and insulting by the Players Association. All right. What that means, I don't know. They didn't release exact numbers. But if you had a $55,000 contract per year and it was a negligible increase, if I had to guess, it's between 1% and 2%, 1% and 3%. For reference, look at the National Association of Letter Carriers, who are currently going through their own negotiation contract issues, and they also agreed to a 3% increase, and less than 3% increase, and it was hated by members. And they shot down that contract. They did not ratify that contract. So just as a comparison point, everyday workers, UFL, same type of percentage potentially, not enough. I agree with them. I don't think it's enough either. If you hit that $71,000 mark, especially as an athlete, getting full year-round health insurance, that makes sense. That's simple. It's logical, right? Pay your players if you want to make money. Now, the big complaint, and I get it. I get the complaint, is the UFL is a startup. Is it though? It's like saying Microsoft and Apple got together and they created a new programming service, and it's a startup. So yeah, there's no bankroll. There is. There's a very large bankroll. It's bankrolled by the XFL Properties Association, which is behind them, funded by Redbird Capital, which is a $18 billion asset management company. So they have some assets, you might say. And then on the other side, the other 50% is the Fox organization, which is a multi-billion-dollar corporation as well. Okay, so here we are, UFL, funded by two different multi-billion-dollar corporations. We're just going to call Redbird, and we're going to call the UFL, the USFL side, the Fox Sports side, as each their own entity, billion-dollar reference. Okay, well, so be it. You have a 5-year plan to make money, to be profitable. That's fantastic. You have a business plan. Redbird did them a favor. They're not going to seek remuneration until after the 5 years. They're going to seek 5% or a percent of profits after that. Not sure on the number. I didn't dig into the contract. I'll be honest. I didn't really care enough to dig into that contract as far as what they're getting paid back, because it's going to be a lot of money. Now, the complaint from a lot of people is that, well, you're getting paid $55,000 a year. Why are you asking for more money? My counter to that is, you go to your employer, you work a job that you could potentially get hurt on any one play, any one movement on a job, anything. You could change your life completely and not for the better. Okay? You have that potential. You're getting paid $55,000 and you have health insurance for only 10 weeks out of the season. We'll just round up. We'll say they get it for 4 months out of the season. Okay? So we're saying 16 weeks you get it. That's how long you get health insurance. 16 weeks of health insurance, $55,000 a year. Tell me that's a fair pay for what the work you're doing. If you have a job that you can get hurt on any one single play in the UFL's case, or in your job, any one single action. Okay? That's something to consider. Now, I will also say, and it's worth noting, there was not a CBA in place between the end of the championship game when players returned to Arlington last year and now. There has not been a CBA in place yet. The CBA to get in place, both sides, the bargaining committee for the union and ownership for the UFL have to agree. Okay, then it has to be ratified by the players, by the members of the UFL. All right, that's the bargaining unit. It has to be ratified by them. That means over 50% has to agree to it. If this were in another state, potentially Florida, then we're talking 70%. That's going to get me started on that. But in Arlington, Texas, 50%. All right, that's easy to number. But they got to come to the same agreement. The disagreement right now, according to every report, is over money and over insurance. Now, why does this matter? Well, on February 21st, UFL quarterbacks, all 24 of them, responded to the last proposal, which was the one they called negligible, that was insulting and unacceptable. They decided to sign a letter that was directed to UFL President Russ Brandon and Executive Vice President Daryl Johnston that reads, the proposal of Players Association, or the proposal our Players Association received on Thursday was unacceptable and insulting. We, all of the quarterbacks in the UFL, have collectively decided to not attend the UFL quarterback training camp this weekend in Arlington, Texas, in protest of that proposal and the message that is sent to us as players. Now, players are allowed to do this. They are not under a contract defining what their wages can be, just like you and I would not work if we were not going to be paid. Let's be very clear about that. Next, very clear, this is a preseason get-together is how it was defined. All right, it is a preseason passing camp. It is not a requirement to attend. It is a strongly suggested thing to attend. Yes, does it look good that they boycotted, that the word boycott came out? That's the term that was used. Sure, maybe. You go to work and don't get paid. You go to work and continue to be paid less than you feel you're worth. It sucks. It absolutely sucks. Anybody who thinks differently, why? Why do you think differently? What are you doing that you feel the need to accept the corporate reference that, oh, no, that's good enough for you? And I get it. A lot of people, they don't like to push back. They don't like to disturb the clear waters. I will strongly disagree that every person in America should do that. I think every person in America, especially workers, they have the right. It's protected in law that you have the right to collectively organize. You have the right to go on strike as an action to an unfair labor practice. Now, had there been unfair labor practice to this point? No. But It might have been perceived that way by the 24 quarterbacks, and here's why. There's a phrasing called good faith bargaining that's used between bargaining committee and and the corporations. Basically means simple things. We'll sit at the table and we'll give you your best offers. We're not going to hold anything back. We're not going to sit here and try to play subterfuge. We're not going to play shadow games. We're going to do what's best for both parties. And we're going to agree to make concessions to both parties. We're not going to negotiate this in the media. Okay? Among those things is there will be no retaliation. All right. Let's start with the 21st. Let's start with the 24 players. How does this story get leaked? There's two sides in a locked room. No media is allowed in there. It's leaked by one of the two sides. That's part one. Part two, in a letter sent to the league officials about what is a private discussion in bargaining, was leaked to media. Who did that? I'm not going to pick a side on that. Literally answer the question, who did that? Okay, it was reported by ESPN. Take that for what it's worth. Now, fast forward a little bit further to media days, which were just recently. There were rumors, inklings in the background, that players, they were considering going on strike and striking during the, boycotting, to use the terminology used in articles, boycotting the media days. Well, the league responded with, if any player, this is, again, according to reports, any player is found to boycott or skip media days due to labor organizing will be terminated or cut from the league. Okay, that's in itself retaliation. That is an unfair labor practice. That is illegal. Number two on this list, all right, there are so many more things. God, this keeps getting crazier and crazier. If these are the things that get leaked, then you as a league should, or as a corporation or as a union, you should come out and say things like, hey, we're sitting here negotiating in good faith, which, to be fair, they both said, which is great. That's what you want to hear. But to have every player to come out that's been asked and say, yeah, the league told us we'd get cut, that isn't, you can't. That's intimidation. It's also illegal. Intimidation in the workplace is an illegal thing. We can't do that. All right. Now, why do I talk about all this? Why am I talking about why this matters? Is because right now we have people putting players on blast. Potential UFL employees, potentially people making money from the UFL. Meaning if they are leaking anything, that is negotiating in the press. You should not, I repeat, should not care if one man is trying to do what's best for him and his family. You should not care if an entire union of workers, these are guys out of college, these are guys trying to fight for a second chance. They just want health insurance for a year. And they want a living wage. They're athletes, man. If we're going to blow money on stupid billion-dollar contracts, what, we can't pay these guys $75,000 a year? We can't pay them equal with WNBA rookies? Is that not possible? If we're going to actually legitimately sit here and talk about this, we're talking a potential 1% increase to your operational budget and salary. All right. With the potential to recruit more, with a potential to give a larger reason why people should continue to watch the UFL, because now you have people that feel comfortable to go out there and play every day as hard as they can. You're not going to see guys taking plays off because they're afraid of injury. That happens. We've seen it in college. We've seen it in the UFL before. Not often, but it happens. Yes, there are success stories, but not a single player yet has been able to go onto the NFL and hit the vested 6-year period yet. It's very close. Brandon Aubrey is probably the first one that'll hit it. Turpin, if he gets re-signed, will also be the one to hit it as well. But those are two. It's not a lot. You have another 7 to 10 that have made it to the league. Yes. That have played more than one season. Absolutely. They don't hit retirement until they hit 6 to 8 seasons. Think of it like your Bird years in basketball. You have to hit a mark. You don't just get the retirement. But here in the UFL, and this is comments coming from our Twitter page, there are many people that are seeking this to be a standalone, successful spring league that operates in the opposite season of the NFL. It provides a gap in the coverage of football. And if that's the case, why are we complaining that players want the best for their long-term success? Do you want to continue to see players roll in and roll out of this league every year because they're not being paid enough? They can go get more money working at Enterprise Car Rentals. They can get full benefits. They can get a retirement day one going and working at Enterprise. No, you don't want to see that. You want to see the best possible athletes that aren't playing in the NFL playing in the UFL. That's what you want to see. If you want this league to be successful, that's what you want to see. You have to pay them. I will make the same complaint about the MLS. You have to pay these players if you want them to succeed. And on top of that, just provide simple benefits. A retirement, insurance, livable wages. Nobody wants to be stuck in a no-bedroom studio apartment. I can tell you that. I've lived in that in my experience. It's miserable. You have nothing. You feel inadequate. There's no positive thing to go home with. The mental health toll it takes is insane, right? It will make you insane. And these are things we're sitting here talking about in every other walk of our life. But the UFL, for some reason, it's taboo to say, yeah, players, go take care of yourselves. Come on, man. What are we doing? If we're fans of the sport, if we really, truly want to see it succeed, why are we putting the blame on the players? They're not the ones in negotiations right now, but they're the ones being slighted. They're the ones being blamed. They're the ones at the end of the day take all the hits, and they take all the lumps. They take all the injuries for our enjoyment. So instead of complaining about the players, go put your money where your mouth is. Go support these guys. Go out. Go to any game. Pay the money for a ticket. Pay the money for 10 tickets. Pay the money for jerseys. Donate to their whatever fund. GoFundMe, whatever they have on their own personal player profiles. Donate to the union. Do what you need to do to put your money where your mouth is if you truly care about this. If you're not just trying to get away from your family during the springtime, like you check out during the fall. If you truly care, and I do apologize, I'm not trying to offend anybody, but man, this is a frustrating thing. Unions have become such a taboo word in today's society. They're just trying to protect people. That's all they're trying to do. They're trying to protect. They're trying to let people live a middle-class lifestyle that are hard workers. You want to tell me these UFL players aren't hard workers? Come on. That electrician that's down the road, he's not a hard worker. The railroad workers every day, the cleanup after East Palestine, every one of those first responders aren't hard workers. The nurses that take care of your family in their last breaths. The person that saves your child after they get into an accident, they're not hard workers. They don't deserve a middle-class lifestyle. Come on, guys. Like, what are we doing? Sports are supposed to bring out the positives. They're supposed to be a place of community. And right now, we continue to take every single opportunity to shoot down the idea of community. A union is just a community. It's a community of workers working together for the betterment of themselves and their lifestyles and their families. Go walk a strike line. You will see a family out there, and you will see a family feeding every person on that picket line. Every single person. And they don't care. They're happy to do it. Go to a backyard barbecue, and I bet you there's a coworker out there. Probably a member of the union. They're best friends. They've worked together. Your grandma and grandpa, your great-grandparents, they probably had some affiliation with the union. And I'll be fair. Unions aren't for everybody. I get that. But to go from a lower-class citizen to a middle-class citizen, there's not a lot of ways up. Why are we fighting one of the easiest and best proven ways to get there? Why is it so bad? I know this isn't normally a topic we talk about on High Low Sports, but I hope this resonates with somebody, preferably with the UFL in some way, shape, or form, because this, I don't know, this isn't good enough. As fans of sports, people that we consider ourselves athletes at one point in time, whether it be a high school, middle school, college, maybe even semi-pro level. If that's you and you're still sitting here complaining that these guys don't deserve it, that they should just shut up and dribble, no, it's not the place. It's not the time for it. We should be giving them support. I don't know what it's going to take, but you know what? I think I've covered a lot. Spend 30 minutes of my ramblings on unions and sports unions. If you guys have any questions, feel free to reach out. Hilo Sports 311, Hilo Sports Podcast 311 at gmail.com. It's links in our bios. It's also going to be in the description of this video. Look, reach out, ask questions, complain, do whatever you need to do. I don't care. Let it happen. I'll be the brunt of it. That's fine. But don't complain to the players anymore. I don't even want to see their DMs because I know how bad it can get. And it's just not worth it. Don't treat a young man trying to better their life, trying to better their family's life. It's just not right, man. And for the journalist that called out a player, shame on you to call yourself a journalist. That's just not right. That's a hitman. You literally just put a player out on blast and you don't feel shame about it. I read your article. It's garbage. It's a garbage thing to do. That's not what journalists are supposed to do. But you know what? We're not going to get into politics. Any questions, comments, drop it in below us. I hope this helps somebody. If not, complain all you want. That's fine. I'll respond to anything that's worthwhile. All right, guys. As always, I appreciate you guys tuning in. Until next time.